This is the voice of Sam Park, and a bit of a preview for season 2 of our show.
In 2014, that's when Republicans blocked Medicaid expansion in Georgia, right? Georgia now has the worst health care in the country, 10 years going on, right? We have, I think, the third highest uninsured rate, population of Georgians who are like hard-working people. They work full-time, but they can't make enough money to afford health insurance. Third highest number. And because of that, we have some of the worst health outcomes in the country, right? And so for 10 years now, or I've been in office for 8 years, so for 8 years I've been fighting tooth and nail to expand Medicaid with the understanding that that access to health care really is a matter of life and death, because I experienced it.
Wow. I have to ask you about Andy Stanley and North Point and
Sure.
Your experience, because it sounded to me like there was a point where for you things were like really low and they were the ones that you turned to.
I don't think they were necessarily the ones I turned to. Like, I'm always very wary of institutional religion.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's why I'm surprised and interested in your story.
Yeah, but it's the message, right?
Okay, all right.
I'm a lawyer.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I will apply reason and logic to anything that I hear.
Sure, for sure.
Right?
Yeah, all right.
And, you know, I brought all of that to bear, you know, whenever it came to anything that Andy would preach. And, you know, it withstood my scrutiny, my limited scrutiny,
okay.
to the degree in which I could.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to take anything at face value and just believe it wholeheartedly. If you believe something to be the truth, you should allow it to be questioned. Because if it cannot withstand even man's scrutiny, how is that supposed to actually be the truth everlasting? Right? So, you know, as I repeatedly, you know, did that, you know, I developed trust, right? In which Andy's not trying to build a following for himself, right? He is trying to lead people to what the faith is actually supposed to be.
That's how you feel.
Right?
Okay.
And so, for example, 2 paradigm shifts that, or at least 1 or 2 if I can remember both, but one is, you know, as you stated during our Bible study meeting, you know, what's the greatest commandment, along with follow me, but it is, you know, to love your God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself, right? There's a word "and" there, right? That conjunction.
Yeah, for sure.
And the way in which Andy described it is your devotion to God is measured by your devotion to man.
Ooh.
It's no longer how good am I before God, right? That's the paradigm shift of Jesus, is how well are you treating your fellow human being, right? The standard is not love yourself as you want to be loved, right? As Andy would say.
Sure.
He would say it's, are you loving people unconditionally like Jesus loved you when you did not deserve it?
You feel like he does that? You feel like he does that? Do you feel like that's what you're getting? That like that's what you got. That's what you're getting from that's the message
of Andy Stanley and North Point and his understanding as to, you know, the early Christians, in which it was a movement, right? In which they didn't have a book, right? The other controversial thing that he said, which I think is also true, right, is that our faith as Christians is not based on a book.
Now we have a conversation with Dr. Nikki Jones, recorded on the 9th of October, before the elections and the results came out, so that we knew there was going to be a runoff election. If you haven't already listened to our last episode with the other candidate in the race, Ishay Collins, you should do that. I hope you go out and vote. I know you will.
I was in Candler Park, and a gentleman walked up to me like, "Hey, do you know Nikki?" Like, but like he said it like as if like we were friends, and like I should like know where you are. And I was all like, no, but like you said it in a way that makes me want to be like, who are we talking about? This is our new friend. And we started talking about, like, he was like, oh, well, you know, she's campaigning, da 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 da. I was like, oh, that's crazy. I was like, I'm actually, you know, I'm a podcaster. I was like, maybe you did walk up, like, to the right person. We need to be friends. Who's Nikki? Tell me, whatever. He's like, well, she's right over there. You can find out yourself. And I was like, all right, man, well, let's go. Like, let's see. So, I mean, I never got to talk to you that day because, like, you were super busy, and I love that for you. But, like, tell me, like, why should I know you? What's going on?
Yeah, so first of all, you should know me because your name is Kindness.
Oh, thank you.
That is I want to know you. How about that?
Oh, okay.
But I am, I'm sort of in the same space. Probably much older than you, but following the George Floyd murder that we all witnessed because we were at home during the pandemic, I started a podcast on IG called Spread Love Instead. Well, so Spread Love Instead is actually my handle, if you will, on IG, my personal page. And so via that page, I started what is called Townhouse Talks with Dr. Nikki. And so for the last 4 years, on Thursdays at 7:30, I ask guests from all around the world 5 questions. And I really added a 6 this year, but 5 questions. And the final question is always, if someone were to ask you how to make this world a better place, or how to be the change you wish to see in the world, what would your response be? So I'm thinking, I'm perhaps it was your energy, perhaps it is Jareen's pitch to say, hey, you should know Nikki. But whatever it is, I agreed when he told me that, you know, you should reach out to her. And then I saw the title of, you know, what you're doing on your podcast. And I said, oh no, we're kindred spirits. It's all about kindness and spreading love. And love is accountability, right? It's not just, I love you for who you are and you're perfect. Sometimes it can be, I love you for your flaws. And because I love you, I'm going to help you with those flaws. And so I think that's why we should know each other. It sounds like we're kind of operating in the same space and the same energy.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I know Jerome probably like has a perfect pitch, like, don't get me wrong, but it was funny because when we really got to talking, I said to him what he said to me when he walked up to me. He's like, really? Did I say that? And I was like, yeah. Because myself and my partner were both like that's definitely what you said. Like, we were both like, whoa, who's Nikki? But yeah, like I do feel like, so I podcast, obviously, like the show's called Loving Kindness Every Day, but I find that I sometimes say, like, I podcast about divine synchronicity, and like I really do. It's because it's like this, like, you can't make these things up. Like, the universe is somehow like interconnected. Like, everything is like the tree branches, like, or excuse me, like the roots of different tree systems. Like, we're all like super like interconnected. Like, something inside of you called out to me as I walked down the street that day. Like, you were just like right there, and like it was just like the universe sort of, if you want to say it, draws everything together. So I love that, and I requested to be your friend on Instagram so that I can see your spread love instead, and what that entails, because it sounds lovely. I thought that as you were speaking, and I looked at it as lover of life in general, and I think that's I think it's important, like, to be a lover of yourself, and you know, I did change my name, you know, legally, like a few years back, and it's actually not about, like, you know, sometimes people say, like, oh, your parents must be so nice, or like, oh, you must be like the nicest person, or whatever. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I do generally try to be a kind person in that sense, but kindness is for you. Like, it's like for me, like, it's about me. It's about being like self-kindness, self-love, self-compassion, because I feel like when you're kind to self, you're naturally kinder to others because you're so used to being kind to self. But like, I think it's really important to do that. And so
no, I like it. I love it.
But,
well, it is wonderful to meet you here, and I am grateful to the universe and Jareen for making this connection happen.
Jareen, apologies, I called you Jerome. Jareen.
Oh, no worries.
So tell me, obviously you're running. What's the deal? Like, tell me what's going on. So I see your spirit, and I appreciate you. So I appreciate that you're probably doing something that's like not only good for yourself, but again, good for others, that you probably feel, if I can say this about you just from having our little chat here, but it seems like you're the kind of person where you started this talk, you're asking people questions. Like, I have to actually ask you what your 5 questions are, or the 6th one you've added. But, tell me what's going on.
Yeah, so, where do I begin? So, I am a native, 3rd-generation native Atlantan. Went to Atlanta Public Schools. I went to Howard University, where I got a undergraduate degree in political science, and I have 2 graduate degrees from Clark Atlanta. And I spent the last 30 years leading turnaround change in 4 Atlanta public schools that crisscrossed across, several Atlanta neighborhoods.
Sorry, what does that mean?
And one of the things that was very clear to me...
Nikki.
I'm sorry?
I apologize, Nikki. I have to cut into you just because I don't necessarily understand what turnaround change means. And
Okay, yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, leading turnaround change basically means, as a counselor and a principal, I led the efforts to make schools work for kids and families. That included improving test scores, improving culture, improving enrollment, improving suspension rates, making them go down, and then also keeping a balanced budget. Those were the major goals of turnaround schools.
Got it.
And so I led that effort both as a counselor and as a principal in 4 Atlanta public schools. But one of the things that I noticed very early on, and I attribute it to my political science background and my master's in human development and counseling. I realized that some of the biggest challenges facing families happened outside of the school building. There was only so much administrators and teachers could do. The rest was on City Hall and City Council. So I've been saying this from beginning in probably 2001. When I retire, because I'm a completer, I'm going to finish and do the job that I was asked to do, or called to do in this instance. And so when I retire, once I did my 30 years, I would run for public office. I didn't quite know what, but I knew I would run for public office. Well, I retired August 2023, March 2024. The most recent person that held the post 3 at-large seat on the Atlanta City Council stepped down. My phone started ringing. You said you were going to run. You live in this district. You'd be perfect. And I, again, said to myself, one of your mantras is be the change you wish to see. And so I stepped up and threw my name into this race. Pulling back on my political science training, but then also my experience of working with neighborhoods and families and kids and stakeholders to turn around or move neighborhoods in an upward in an upward way, upward mobility way. And I can give specifics. I'm happy to give specifics, but that's the generalization of why I am running and what makes me think I am prepared to do this work on a broader scale for more neighborhoods throughout the city.
I mean, with regards to like a professional interview setting, Dr. Nikki, like, I hear it, I know it, I hear that, like, you're super prepared and that, like, you're gonna get it done. Like, I have you on an episode called Only the Winners, so, like, I can see that. And, like, you've been manifesting this for a while with regards to speaking your words and saying you're gonna do it. I suppose the only question I have about the specifics is the thing that you noticed that ended in your ability to help the children outside of the home. what is it that you're trying to do? Like, it seems like there's something you mentioned, obviously you're very qualified, clearly, like, for the job, right? But like, you mentioned this thing that you wanted to do being maybe a little bit unattainable or unreachable from your current position, like within APS. And you said, after I retire, I'm going to go and I'm going to finish the job. What is this job that you're finishing?
Well, so I couldn't work on zoning. So parents had affordable housing options, right? Like on city council, I can do that. Now, when I was at Centennial Place in Midtown, we worked with the developers at the Integral Group to set aside a few townhouses for teachers to go into a lottery to possibly have, right? But now on city council, I can do that at a larger level. When I was principal in Kirkwood, I noticed a time and attendance problem with staff. And when I looked into it deeper, because I was never one to just say, okay, write them up, let's write them all, off-board them and get somebody else. I'm a counselor at heart. So why are you late? So when I looked at the addresses of the people that were late the most often, they were in Hiram. They were coming from Forsyth. They were coming from Cumming at the time. Now that some of these places are expensive as well. They were coming from Clayton County. They were driving an hour and a half to work because they could not afford to live in the city of Atlanta. So flash forward to my campaign for city council, I am proposing a portion of our affordable house fund be set aside for our first responders and our workforce individuals, which includes teachers, nurses, firefighters, police officers. So what I'm saying, also I noticed, people late every day to school, families, kids, that sort of thing. So I would sit out because there's a thing called proximity. It's a behavioral response called proximity. So I'm standing on the curb, so when the cars come up, they see the principal. Again, but I'm asking why, because it's like 7 cars coming up at a time. And I'm like, if you don't mind me asking, I know y'all didn't all leave at the same time, but you all got here at the same time. Can I just ask, what is your barrier to getting to school on time? They're like, Dr. Jones, the lights on Hosea Williams are not synchronized, right? All of that is something that is under city council's purview. Now, I called my city council person at the time to get it resolved. My kids, there was National Bike to School Day. All my kids arrived in a car one year. And I said, hey,
wow.
why do y'all bike to school? There's no safe pathway because there's no sidewalk. So I called my city council person, worked with the city to get those things done. Now that I am retired and turned around these schools in terms of when I left, performance had increased, enrollment had increased, the positive behavioral incentives and supports have been put in place to reward kids when they do well, as opposed to only holding them accountable when they didn't. I held a balanced budget every year. Once I completed the things that I wanted to do in that space and reached my retirement of 30 years, I knew then, let me go work at a higher level. Didn't know when, but like I said, when this position opened up, it just made sense, and I threw my name into this ring.
You said before that you kept saying, I'm gonna run after I retire. I'm gonna do something in the city council after I retire. So you then mentioned some of the things that you did do during your career, right? What is it that you're going to do? What are your these are the top 3 things that are most important to me. The transportation thing is something I really heard when you said about the safe biking. And
equitable transportation is one of my top 3.
It's a big deal for me, that.
We need sidewalks in every neighborhood that are connected, right? So that everyone in the city of Atlanta is connected to all that Atlanta has to offer. And right now, we don't have that in some neighborhoods. It is unsafe because you start off on the sidewalk and then you're in the street. And then hopefully it picks back up at some point. There are some neighborhoods too that have been under construction to get sidewalks put in place for years now. And the southwest corridor of Cascade Road is a perfect example. We need well-maintained roads. And yes, that includes filling potholes, but what is causing these potholes? What is happening underneath? That is the bigger issue that we need to address, our infrastructure. Atlanta was not built for all of these people. But we're here now, so we need to be proactive and have these conversations and work with professionals in this space, the Army Corps of Engineers, cities that have done it well, that have done upgrades well. We need to do that. We need a bus and transit system that works and that people trust and that people use. So we got to be smart about how we expand. We got to work with MARTA, which right now the city and MARTA are a little fractured. So we've got to repair that relationship because the citizenry is depending on us. Just as we want everyone to use our rapid transit system and our bike paths and our walking paths, they've got to work for people. Because you have one or two bad experiences and you're hopping back in your car. So that has to work. We have to follow through on bus rapid transit in the Summerhill neighborhood, on the Campbellton corridor, and in Clifton corridor as well. And we got to deliver on these promises. We also got to stop promises so much if we know we can't deliver. And then finally, this Beltline rail conversation. I believe that Beltline rail is something we need to look into and figure out a way to get it done. And I believe we need to finish the Beltline trail for everyone. I know that there's not the same pot of money, but it is the same level of promises made and promises that need to be kept. So that is one of my big ones.
So
the second one, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I want to ask you a question, please, before we move on.
Yeah.
Taking a step back between the fractured relationship between the city and MARTA, and it kind of is a twofold question that I had. I agree with what you're saying with regards to making the MARTA experience positive. You know, the MARTA is like our light rail system for those who don't know. Making it a positive experience. However, that seems like a multifaceted problem and an expensive one. And my question is, like, do we have the money for these things? Like, do we have the money for connecting all of the neighborhoods via walking path, via sidewalk? You know, do we have? Is it feasible really, or are we, like, where's our budget at? Have we overextended ourselves with some of these things that, you know, do we have the money for it? And how are we going to do it really? How are you going to make it so that it's a positive experience on the MARTA, you know, beside the obvious?
Yeah. So I think everything starts with an idea, right? So these are my ideas for the city of Atlanta, just like I had ideas for schools. And then you figure out funding. So yes, we look at our general funds budget, or the budget portion of the budget that we can control. The city of Atlanta has about a $2.7 billion budget. About $850 million of that, the city council and the administration, you know, controls. And so of that, there is some that is allocated for transportation. I am saying that we double what we're spending on sidewalks currently, and that's just moving some funds around so that we can get the sidewalk issue addressed. I am also proposing that we look at grants. We look at federal dollars that can help us in this space. As an educator, that's what we lived off, was grants, and looking for partnerships. And so there are a lot of partnerships out there, and I would help to make those connections. That's how you pay for it. We have what is like a non-departmental section of the budget that is about 14% of the budget, which is also called rainy day funds. That's a way to try to fund some of this. But these are my thoughts. I would work to make them priorities if they fit, where we are as a city. Right now we have a AAA bond rating, which means that we are most likely to be able to cover all of our debts, right? And so, to your point, I'm not trying to overextend, because one person can't, make these decisions. But this is what I would propose. These are my high priorities, and I would work with council to make that happen. And when it comes to MARTA, we just had an audit, with our MARTA partnerships, and it's being debated, but there was $70 million that it appears that MARTA owes the city. If that is the case, then that also parts of those funds can help with the sidewalks piece. So those are just a few ideas, but to your wonderful point, yes, I would have to work with council, and we would have to decide on these priorities together along with citizens in each neighborhood. Obviously, we cannot put a stop at every neighborhood in the city of Atlanta. And not other cities don't have that either. But we've got to figure out where are the high touch points on the rail line that we can either serve better or add stops, and so that we can make the experience something that people want to take part in. And right now, people just don't trust it. And so once we figure that out, then we need obviously a communications plan, a full blitz, marketing blitz on come back to MARTA or try out MARTA.
Can we talk about spread love instead? Like, I keep wanting to go back to that and like how we started the conversation and the heart of it, because like I hear, like, I know, sometimes like we have to compartmentalize things, and so like I definitely hear, like I can see already, like, you getting the job done. You're like a getter job doner. Like, I can see that.
A completer. I'm a completer.
Yeah, I see that, like, for sure. Like, honestly, like, in my spirit, in my soul, I see that 1,000%. It's already done. Like, I'm like, we've already won. So, like, I get that. I guess I want to hear, like, if just for a second, like, the heart of it. Like, I just feel like, and maybe I'm wrong, and it's okay. You can be like, nope, that's not it. But it just feels like there's some sort of, like, a heart of love in it that we haven't talked about, and I just want to hear if it's there.
Yeah. So I'll tell you, Spread Love Instead came from a hit by one of my favorite groups called Take Six. And they had a song called Spread Love. And then a part of the chorus was spread love instead of spreading lies. Spread love, the truth needs no disguise. And so when I did Spread Love Instead, it's for you to fill in the blank, right? If you're feeling sad, spread love instead. Come out of your sadness or stay home. If you can't spread love, stay home till you're over your sadness. And then when you come out, just present yourself in the best way possible. When I was working in education, there were times when I ran into individuals and people and cultures that just spoke in a negative frame. And for me, spreading love was to talk in a positive frame. I'm not going to say stop running. I'm going to say walking feet. I'm not going to say don't kick. I'm going to say use your feet for kindness. Remember, feet remain on the floor. And when I did that for 30 years, people around me either hopped on board or they didn't do it in front of me. And that was super important to me because we're training up children. And I didn't want them to have a deficit in mindset. I didn't want them to think that this is the way that you view things. So spreading love for me is just spreading the possibility of a different reality at times. And so I actually, at one of my hardest times, and one of my hardest assignments, I literally had love tattooed in white ink on my wrist so that I could look down and say, no, this is to remind you, start from a place of love. So with this conversation, if somebody, I need to see Dr. Jones, I am not happy with this situation, instead of saying, oh, well, let me just tell her why this happened this way, blah, blah, blah. Start from a place of love. I hear you, and I can tell you're upset. And I know how I feel when I'm upset. So I get it, right? Instead of jumping right into my story or jumping and being defensive. So that's the way I do this work. That's why when you said to me, well, what about where's the money? Very good point. You know, obviously we have to look at the reality of what is unknown to me right now. Right now, I'm just looking at a budget. It's a pie graph. But when I get into city council and they give me papers to read and I sit down and I talk with individuals, it's probably more complex. Education is more complex. So I know it's probably more complex. But when you start from a place of love, you're starting from a place of, I don't know everything. I don't have all the answers. Let me listen as well as let me share. And I say this all the time. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. You're supposed to listen more. And that's something that has brought me great success in the past. And I would use it in this position. And then finally, like I said, love is accountability. If I didn't care what was happening at City Hall, or I didn't care what was happening, at my friend's house or to my friends, I would just let it ride. But because I love this city, because I love my friends, because I love my kids, I'm going to hold them accountable. I am going to say to them, this is not right, or this is what I think should change or be different. And so that's how spread love instead kind of became not only my hashtag or my status or profile on social media. It's who I am. Don't spread some things that happen when you do things on a knee-jerk kind of basis. Be thoughtful, be strategic, be kind, start from a place of love, and then move forward.
Thank you for that. Thank you very much for that. I needed that. I see you now. I see it now. Have you heard that thing? It's been said, when 2 or more agree on a thing, it's done.
You said when 2 or more what?
Agree on a thing, it's done.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're familiar with that? Do you believe that at all?
I do.
So
yeah.
Tell me. No, tell me.
No, I do. Yeah, I do. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you were talking, and you said specifically, I'm just looking at a pie graph right now, but when I get into city council, I'm going to be looking at papers and obviously going through things and having conversations. And in that moment, I saw you there doing it. And I say, 2 or more agree on a thing, it's done, then we can stand it together, we agree, it's done. Like I said to you in the beginning, I hear you speaking, I know it. I got professionally, you're the person for the job in that sense, you feel I do believe your thoughts dictate your reality. So it's if you feel that you're going to do a great job, you're going to do a great job. Yeah. If somebody convinces you, that you're not good at math, then you start to believe that story, right. And you start to say, I'm not good at math, and then you're not good at math.
Right.
Because you tell yourself that,
And something you said too early on, when you said about the word kindness is not just about being kind, but you said something about know yourself, loving yourself.
It's for you. Like kindness
yeah,
is.
it's for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that resonates with me. I know that every experience I've had has prepared me for this moment, right? My political science training, way I grew up and way I was exposed to politicians and politics and public service and volunteerism as a kid, to my master's in human development and counseling. I know how to approach people. I know how to get to understand people and how they think. I know how to problem solve and create consensus and clarity and facilitate conversations that other people think there's no way you can get those people in the room and have that conversation. I did it all the time. And then finally, and why I'm bringing this up, I have a doctorate in educational leadership, which is all research. That's all reading. That's all understanding. That's seeking not only public comment and consensus and understand it, what the neighborhood wants, but that's also looking at case studies and precedents in the areas where we're trying to make change. Because we don't have to do this work alone. There are cities with similar different demographics, similar issues. There are schools that have organized teams that are studying urban planning. They're studying infrastructure in cities before, early 19th century. So I am a creature of research, and I am incredibly curious. And I think that has served me well in everything that I've done to this point, and it will really serve me well on council.
Yeah. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. I feel your passion. I hear it. I really do. So I kind of like have, obviously asked you questions and sort of dictated the conversation. I always like to leave it open at the end to ask, if you want to say anything or if you have any questions for me, or if, I always like to just leave at least one, kind of like response, in the sense that I recognize I've been, asking the questions and leading the conversation. So, if you have any questions or if you want to say anything, now's the time. Tell me.
Yeah, the only thing I will add is, first of all, I am so incredibly honored to have the opportunity to share my ideas, my path to this point with people like you. This experience of running for office has allowed me to meet some of the most amazing people, and to just share and just reiterate my belief that people are inherently good, right? So thank you for this opportunity and for what you do and what you provide for the culture in general. I'm also grateful that I'm running with some incredibly passionate people that have done good work in the city. I say that I am different in the way that impact that I have made, direct impact with changing neighborhoods and changing the lives of citizens in the city. I have a 30-year history of doing just that. And then I will also add, some people in this race will mention that they are the only one that has a history of legislative experience. And I would say, look at the impact of that legislative experience before you make a judgment that just having it is a good thing. How impactful has it been? If your overall goal is to raise test scores of kids, how well are kids reading in the city of Atlanta? If your overall goal is to create a balanced budget for the school system, look at whether the school system is at $100 million deficit at this point. I am about what impact in a positive way have you made, because I believe the best indicator of future success is past success in whatever you're doing. And Martin Luther King talked about this. Whatever stage of life, be the best at that. Whether you're a street sweeper, be the best street sweeper. And that's how I've always hired as a principal. I didn't need you to have been an assistant principal before. But if you were a great teacher, you had great outcomes, you are a grade level chair, so you showed leadership. You chaired the fall festival and you chaired the annual awards day. Those are the things that will let me know in your next station of life, you will be just as successful, if not more, because I knew you were going to have my backing, right? And my support. So I say to you, please, with your backing, the support of the neighborhoods and the citizens of Atlanta, I will continue my past behavior of improving neighborhoods for the better for all of the citizens in Atlanta.
Who are we talking about, Nikki? You mentioned people will say certain things, and I mean I am familiar with the signs that I've seen, and I'm not sure who your direct opposition would be in that sense. Like, who are we winning against? Like, what do we mean?
Yeah. Like I said, there are 5 in the race, but there is one person in the race that currently holds a position, and so in city government, if you will, on the school board. And so what has been something that has been said, directed possibly at all the rest of us, and then also directed at the community as to why they should pick this person. I am just saying, look at the totality of the record, not just the fact that someone has served. How impactful has their service been on the constituents that they were picked to serve? And I think you can do that with all of us in our capacity and our station in life. And just because someone's station is higher, they still have the same responsibility of positive impact. So that's all I'm saying. I believe we're all on the same level, and so look at our impact.
Okay. Who's the person that you mean who's currently, I'm looking at an article.
Office?
Yes.
Oh, yes. So Isha Collins is a member of the Atlanta Public Schools School Board.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
We have 2 others, gentlemen. They are advocates and that's not the word, activists in the city, and they have great records. Being activists, they can talk about their actual impact. I don't know it as well. And then we have one young lady, Amber Collins, who is also done some advocacy in the city. I don't know, in detail either, but so that rounds out the group. It is Isha Collins, a current board member for APS, Amber Collins, community activist and mother, Devin Barrington Ward, a community activist and political. He has worked in a lot of political campaigns and has run for office a few times. And then Dewan Robinson, another activist from Atlanta, and I think he's run for office at least one time before. So it's a great representation of the city, and I think we should all be evaluated on our impact in our sphere of influence.
All right. Interesting.
So I will say this. I have been saying this everywhere I go. As a principal, and for 30 years, now listen, I was featured in the New York Times, CBS Morning Show with Gayle King, top 2% of growth in the state of Georgia one year, helped to lead two schools off of the failing schools list in the state. So I could have asked or went for other jobs that were at the district level or what have you, right? However, I chose to stay in the schools, Title I schools, which were the most needy schools, for my entire career, because I was held accountable, and as I told you, I'm a completer. I could see the impact. If all kids got to school safely, I could check that off my list. If all kids got breakfast, check that off my list. All kids got lunch, could check that off my list. All the kids got home, right? And so it gave me a satisfaction to know that I was being held accountable, I was making impact. And so what I found is when people leave, what I found, when people leave those building settings in my line of work, it seems like they forget that you have to be accountable. I was accountable every moment of the day, whether it was a parent or a teacher or a custodian or a cafeteria worker or a kid. A kid would say, Dr. Jones, on the afternoon announcements yesterday, you said we were having pizza. We had pasta for lunch today. Everyone was holding me accountable. When that is the case, when you reach out to me, even if I'm delayed in responding, I am going to respond, I am going to apologize, and I am going to acknowledge my role in what has been in the way. I believe some people, when they get in places where they're so far removed, they're not used to being held accountable. And so they walk in that way. And that's a problem. That is a huge problem for me, because I tried to raise kids in the school system that weren't that way. They did the right thing because it was the right thing to do. Not if, how can this person hurt me, right? How can this be held against me? And so and I'm not saying that is the case, but I'm telling you, I'm going to call you back. Even if it takes a minute, I'm going to call you back. Because I'm just used to being held accountable, and I like it that way. I like it that way.
And the candidates asked you for your support. They want you to go out and vote. They want you to vote for them. They want you to vote, right? As do I. I'd like for you to go out and vote, but not for me. Just do it for yourself. Go and vote because your vote matters, and you won't be disappointed this time. I also recognize that we have not because we ask not. So I'm going to ask you for your support. I'm going to ask you to visit kindnesscalloway.com, click shop, support the show. I'm going to ask you to go to Bentley Fortune and use our coupon code Kindness the Kid, or visit Crown Me LLC, Crown Me Empire, and use our coupon code Kindness the Kid. I'm going to ask you to like this video and subscribe and support the show. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to thank you in advance for giving us 5 stars and doing all these things that cost you nothing and support the show. I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to thank you in advance for sharing this link, this video, this text message with a friend or a family member, especially if they live within the city of Atlanta and they can vote and support the show.
Do you want to get well?
And I'm going to say thank you for all of you beautiful people who love me and have been supporting me and sending me love. There's a special thank you to John Handelman, a special thank you to Julie Borders, a special thank you
Get up. Pick up your mat and
to the love. You know who you are. And it's just thank you to you for listening and for being here, because we need you and we love you. I'm going to end this with an appeal to Alexander. Alexander, your mom really wants to speak with you, okay? So please contact her. Also, share this video, you guys, so that Alexander and their mother can be reunited. Support the show.
I am so incredibly proud of you. I am so proud of what you're doing.
This is my name. This is where I'm from. This is what I have to say. Say it for me one more time. This is my name.
My name is Anya. And I'm originally from Germany. And I miss my son, Alexander. I love him so much. I love you so much. And I just want you to open up communication with me again. Because I'm really hurting. And I miss you.
Your mom loves you, Alexander, so much.
I'm so proud of you for what you're doing.